All right, we're on.
Welcome to the Utah Senate Legislative Update. We are moving bills now on the floor. Finished up the base budget process, passing out the House bills today. That process is finished, and now we'll be focusing on building blocks in the budget process. Our committees now, the standing committees are working. We had Senate bills and House bills to address. One of those bills was First Substitute 99, and we have the Senate sponsor here, Senator Jenkins, to talk about that. Natural gas fueling for our natural gas vehicles for the state. Senator Jenkins.
Thank you. It's good to be here, all of you guys. Well, as you can see today, there was a lot of activity on the floor over the idea of trying to put some standards into the state-owned vehicles, whereby we can replace those with more fuel efficient. And so the motor pool come to me and said, look, instead of just making this compressed natural gas, why don't we add the Tier 3 fuels? And they showed me where the emissions on Tier 3 and CNG were equal. Oh. So it's like, well, gee, it only makes sense if they're that good. I didn't know that Tier 3 was that good, but they are. And then they wanted the opportunity to put in some electricity and hybrids. He says we already use some of those, and we asked them how much of their new purchases were going with these kind of vehicles, and they're in the 22 or 23% range now. So we are already doing some of this. So this is just elevating the standard, you know, to 50%. And like I say, this is about being a good steward, a good environmentalist.
And that answers a great...
It was Mr. Clark here that called me and said, are you the new environmentalist in town?
New environmentalist?
Anyway, it is about being a good steward, though. That's what this is all about. You know, you got to be a good example up here. People are expecting that out of us. And gee, if there's one organization should be good examples, that ought to be us.
One difference between the state's operations and private operations is that the state can build and use its own natural gas fueling infrastructure, where private businesses have less opportunity. But you've used natural gas vehicles, you said, in your own business.
Oh yeah, 4 years now. We're on our 4th year, so it's not complete, but we've had no problems at all. You know, what you end up doing, just like yourself, you know, I would imagine that 85–90% of all the fuel you buy is from the same station. Well, we're the same way. When my trucks leave in the morning to go make deliveries, we always go to the same stations pretty much. And as long as you know where some others are, in case you get in trouble, we go to the same stations, and we don't have an issue at all. And there are lots of CNG stations in Utah, and once you know where they are, there's no issue at all. In fact, Senator Adams' bill, of course, helps the infrastructure increase even more in those. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's not an issue. Is that good?
And what's your business?
I own a plumbing wholesaler, Great Western Supply. Yeah. Don't forget that.
Let's put a plug in for that right now.
They're one of the largest in the state. If you have plumbing in your house, it probably came from Great Western. So.
Senator Adams, talk about your bill with improvement in infrastructure for clean fuels.
Yeah.
What's the bill number?
Last year we ran a bill, and the basic premise behind it is that we have a lot of resources in the state of Utah. We have the lowest, and we've talked about it here, but it's just a fact that we have the lowest natural gas prices in the nation and in the world. You go around. So with that resource, what Senator Jenkins here is trying to do is use that resource. But the challenge is some of those transitions or being able to convert have a cost to them. So we need to build not only the vehicle conversions, but we need to build the actual stations. So we're trying to find a way to allow public utility companies to participate in that. They have in the past a little bit. But there is an opportunity that I'll be talking about that actually creates a funding source for them to do that.
You know, it's interesting. I'm in the Ogden Industrial Park, in Ogden. And just up the street from us, we had a brand new Maverick store just built, opened up about 2 months ago. And right next to it on their own, they put a great big LNG, liquid natural gas refueling station right there. Private enterprise did it on their own. And now that I know it's there, my next trucks that I buy, I'll look pretty hard at LNG because I have a station right there ready to go. So it's happening. It's starting to take place.
It is. So when you do that, though, what happens is we actually extract the natural gas in Utah and Wyoming, and the people that do that are employed and they pay taxes, and the businesses pay taxes. And so instead of sending our revenue to Saudi Arabia for regular gas, we actually enrich and strengthen our economy at home. And I think that's a good policy. And then in addition to that, natural gas is a lot cleaner. And it's a win-win-win. And the other thing that I'm concerned about and have been, I can remember in the 70s when we had the first oil embargo, 25 cent a gallon gas, and it went up to $1.50, our economy tanked. But when we're dependent on one source of fuel, an oil embargo shuts us down. But when we have diversification and multiple different sources, it actually is great for our economy and for the, to help the public and anyway.
It's interesting. I had a local vendor call me when he read the bill and said, gee, we're starting to build some of these locally now, and we're starting to get our approvals, and we think that we could see conversions go down in the $4,000, $4,500, $4,800 range real soon. So gee, if we could get down in that range, it would make sense for everyday people to start converting right now. It would be a real plus.
And I think Senator Jenkins highlights a question that I was wondering about. What is the how clean is natural gas compared to Tier 3 fuel?
Yeah.
And they're about the same.
Yeah, about the same. I was surprised.
That's very interesting because that highlights the need for us to get to Tier 3 fuels as soon as we can, because that really makes a difference in the air. And I'm happy to say that I drive a Tier 3 fuel car that I didn't know that I had purchased. It's a Subaru. Put a plug in for Subaru today. It's an 8 on the scale of emissions, and 8, 9, and 10 scaled vehicles are Tier 3 vehicles. So I'm anxious for the time when we get Tier 3 fuels, and hopefully sooner than later.
A lot of the Tier 3 fuels. Oh, sorry.
Senator Knudsen?
No, go ahead with your question.
A lot of the Tier 3 fuel refining plants, Holly's expanding to produce Tier 3 fuels in Utah, are meant for other markets. Is there a way for Utah to encourage the sale of Tier 3 fuels here?
We're just learning about some of the barriers, some of the things that that needs to happen before we get Tier 3 fuels here. And this is a learning process for us during the session. Senator Valentine actually has expressed here in our updates some of the things he's been working on to discover how we can get those fuels here quicker. He'd be the best one to talk about that. I don't know, Senator Jones, have you been, any members of your caucus been working on this issue? And
well, I know the Clean Air Caucus has been working on a variety of different things this year, and that's certainly one of them. And I can tell you that air quality is now one of the top 5 issues in the state of Utah. And we used to never ever see that even mentioned, and now it's a huge concern. But I think the chicken and egg thing now, I think people are realizing that now if you build it, they will come.
The tier 3 really hasn't, the standards haven't been totally defined, so it's a little bit tough to say we're going to have Tier 3 fuel. But what we're hearing from the refineries is that if they if they develop fuel that is cleaner, they are sending it to other spots in the nation. If they blend it in with we're getting the same benefit here. At least that's what they've told us. is that the rumor has been is they're sending it out of state, but at least when they came in and talked to us, they're saying that the refineries that are creating the higher efficient or the cleaner fuel, it just gets sold on the open market, and our market's part of that. So you may want to talk to them, but that's at least what they're telling us. So they are making improvements on the emission qualities of the fuel, but when they do it, they aren't sending it out of state. They're actually sending it around our state and to the other states.
And according to Senator Valentine, we are actually importing some fuels from other states, so that means that those refiners also have to be producing Tier 3 fuels for those to be here in our state. So those are the things that we're working through, trying to discover, but it's our favor that this be expedited as much as possible as we discover how we can expedite that.
An industry spokesman yesterday in the caucus said that the production of Tier 3 fuels in Utah would bring more emissions from the refineries, thus negating any kind of clean air solution that using those fuels might mean in vehicles. Is it appropriate to be rushing into a Tier 3 when the technology is not worked out? And as he said, that sulfur has to go somewhere, and it's going to be coming from the refineries now rather than from the cars.
So that's the first time I've heard that. We're not experts on that. We're in a discovery process, and so it's good to have all the information before we make some final decisions. But hopefully we can get to a point where it's a net gain for us for clean air. Senator Knudsen?
Yeah, you know, Senator Jenkins, the reason I asked that question on the floor, I had an experience back in the 70s. Gas prices were really, really high, but diesel fuel was less. And so we bought a new car with a diesel engine. And that was the beginning of one nightmare after another. And not only was it dirty, but mechanically there was something that just absolutely was not right with that engine. Come to find out that everyone that bought that particular model with that engine had nothing but problems. You know, it's encouraging to hear that you've had very positive experience.
Years ago, when they produced these kits, they had to be EPA certified. And there were kits that were not certified, and so there became an issue when you wanted to re-register your vehicle, and it was a mess. But that's all been cleaned up now, and our experience so far has been just wonderful. We're very, very happy with it, and I'm saving a lot of money over my competition, and that goes into my pocket as profits, and I couldn't be happier.
The one thing. The one thing that we do know is that, as was stated on the floor today, a big part of the emissions that we've got, a big part of the pollution that we've got out there is coming from our tailpipes and from our homes and from our building businesses. And so that's where we can make the big difference. And that's where we need to make the big sell to all of the citizens in the state of Utah that we all have ownership in this problem. We can't just point fingers at the refineries or industry who have been working and spending lots of money to clean up their businesses over the past several years. It's now come down to the point where if we really are going to make a difference in the air, it's with our own vehicles, with the emissions that come out of our tailpipes, and with our homes, with our efficiencies, with furnaces and whatever else that we have available out there. So this is Senator Jenkins' proposal shows leadership from the state to everybody else in the state. This is one way that we can do it. We can clean up our vehicles, and that's going to have a huge effect on air quality, and so it makes a real difference. There may be some bills out there that are kind of message bills, but this particular bill can really make a difference.
And not only is Senator Jenkins a leader for the leading out with this, proposing some legislation that will make the state a leader, he's a leader in his own business by using natural gas. So
a true pioneer.
A true pioneer.
President Niederhauser, can I just, you said earlier that you want to move toward Tier 3 as soon as possible, but it seems like what we've heard up until now has been reservations or concerns about whether it's practical to move and whether the state, what the state's role should be. I mean, what should the state's role be in doing that? Is this just going to be a market-driven transition, or do you think there's something that this body can do to accelerate that?
Well, we can do a lot as a legislature, and I want to highlight that we can't outlaw inversions. Inversions is a natural phenomena, but we can do some things to make those inversions as clean as possible. Frankly, this is a discovery process. I know more about Tier 3 fuels and Tier 3 cars than I did at the beginning of the session, but still learning some of the things that are going to be involved in making that switch. And we're also discovering ways that we can encourage that, and I think as much as possible we need to be encouraging that as a legislature.
You know, I want to say something here too, Robert. I think it's exactly what you said. I think it is starting to be market driven. When people like me, who own my business, can recognize that there's savings there. Not that there's physical savings in the fuel I buy and the efficiency. So it encourages me to run more efficient and be a little bit of an example. But there's no question that this mandate, as you heard Senator, she voted against it, the no vote out there. She says, like, she didn't think that we should mandate, but in this case where we're mandating government, us, the people we represent, I thought it was very appropriate to do that. So that's why we did it. So I think, frankly, I think this is turning a leaf and heading in the right direction. I believe we're showing a lot of leadership now.
I think it's a discovery process, not only for the legislature, but for the public. I mean, Senator Oakland just talked about 60% is out of our cars, 30% is out of the other stuff that we do as individuals, everybody in this room, 10% is from industry. So 90% of us own the inversions or own the pollution. And the only way we're going to get rid of 90% of it is if the public comes with us. And they need to learn about Tier 3 fuels. They need to learn about the affordability of the natural gas conversions. They need to be aware of electric vehicles, everything that we can do as citizens to be able to take care of this. So it is a discovery process, and not only for us, but hopefully for everyone in the state, because it's going to take everyone in the state to get through this, make a change.
So let me tell you, the other day, my Isuzu dealer come to me, and I buy a lot of Isuzu trucks that we deliver with. And he had a white piece of paper like that. And in that white piece of paper was a box, a square box, that covered about 30% of the page. And then right in the very corner down here, you can hardly see there's a little red dot. And he says, this white paper represents the emissions in 2000. He says, that square represents the emissions in 2006. And he says, you see that red dot right there? He says, that represents the emissions in 2014 out of an Isuzu clean diesel truck. So we're getting there. I'm telling you, I'm pretty impressed by that. So clean diesel, all these alternatives are working. We just got to keep pushing them.
We've seen the data from DEQ. The air today is much cleaner than it was 10 years ago. But that should not be a barrier or excuse for us not to make it cleaner going forward. And we want to pursue this as aggressive, as reasonably and prudently possible. Other questions? Other issues?
There was a related bill that was discussed in committee yesterday, SB 164, about, I think it was called the Environmental Protection Amendments. You're on that committee. On Monday we were talking about how you want to pass clean air legislation, but you want to make sure it's important, it's actually going to make a difference. Maybe Senator Oakland, you could speak to this. What about that bill was not? How is it not going to be effective? What was your reason for tabling it?
Yeah, what the bill did was say that the state. We passed a little bit of background. We passed a law a few years ago that said the state cannot pass a law that is more stringent than a federal requirement, or we cannot pass requirements that are more stringent than the federal requirement. What that bill said was we would revise that to say that the state can pass laws that are more stringent than the federal requirement. But already in the discussion in the committee was, already in the current law, it allows the agency, the Department of Environmental Quality, to be able to revise that with good science. If there's a reason for them to change to a higher standard than the federal standard, we can do that now if the science is brought to whoever is bringing the motion or whatever the proposal is. If there's good science that says we need to do this, we can do that now. And in fact, we have done that, as was testified in committee yesterday, in some cases. And so the discussion revolved around whether or not we need to change the statute that's already in place that allows us to do what the new statute would say that we can now do. And so the bill, I think, was tabled for the purpose of seeing if there is something else that we need to take a look at there that we were missing, or if we want to go back and take a look at this bill a little bit closer and make kind of a statement. That's what the bill would end up being, would be a statement kind of a bill. And so we could readdress that at some point in the future.
What kind of information are you looking for to bolster that bill?
Well, if there's something in the bill that would make it easier, for example, for an agency to do their job, to take a recommendation, if somebody came in and said, all right, Tier 3 vehicles are now there, and we can actually have a more stringent requirement than the federal government does, and we would be able to take a look at it. The relationship or the bill that we have now, though, the law that we have now allows us to be able to do that through the agency as it is, if someone brings the right evidence and the right background information to us. So we're trying to see if there really is a need for the bill or if it's something that we already have in place.
Yeah, and there was some concern, though, that that process is cumbersome, that it's really difficult to change the standards based on bringing more information to the DAQ.
Yeah, what Senator Jenkins says is right on, is that 2014 truck, that little dot, that the new vehicles are a lot more environmentally friendly than the old ones. But if you were to require everyone to sell their 2009 and older vehicles and ban them from the state, that would be a tough thing economically for the public. And I think there has to be not only science, but I think people need to look to see the effect of what's going on, because we'd all like to have 2014 vehicles. The fact of the matter is most of us can't afford them. And so we need to, as we make this transition, we would clean up our air greatly by driving brand new vehicles. The challenge is, how do we get that down? And some things are available, it's just a matter of finding a way to make that happen.
I'd like to make a comment on your question. I sound like the conservative here, but I don't think the federal government should be telling Utah what our requirements ought to be. We have a different environment here than the national guidelines or X, but we have a different geography here, and I think that we should be able to decide through the science. I think the science, as has been mentioned, is cumbersome to go through that, and I think we need action, and we need it now. And so I would favor making that change, that we can set our own guidelines on those kinds of issues.
But because the bill is tabled, it's pretty much over for this session, isn't it?
I don't think it is.
No, I'm the committee chair there, so we have the bill in the committee still, and we offered him yesterday to go to work and bring it back and see if he can get a little more support amongst committee members for it. So it really depends on the sponsor right now, Senator Davis, what he does with it.
I spoke with Senator Davis this morning, and he's very anxious to get input from the committee members, because he would like to redraft what portions of the bill could be made more acceptable. So that's what he's working on, his bill.
Whose input is going into this second draft?
Well, I guess he's going to contact the committee members and find out exactly what their position is.
Mm-hmm.
Go from there. But our bills are all drafted by the Legislative General Counsel's office.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is finally done until 2 days after the session ends, then.
Yeah.
So count on being dead.
Yeah, nothing's ever over till it's over.
So if we're gonna make changes to policy that affect the public and affect business and jobs and everything in the state of Utah, there really ought to be some science. And whether it's cumbersome now or is less cumbersome with the current bill, we still ought to have some good reasons for being able to make the changes that are proposed. And so maybe that bill should have some requirement that said there needs to be a reason, there needs to be good science behind that reason, and then that would kind of answer the questions.
I think we've got several questions that have been texted or tweeted in.
So can we take a few of those?
Yes.
Okay. There are two again today that are related to SB 100, so I'll read them both and maybe have you guys respond. Utahns, while divided about marriage equality, support SB 100 by a large majority, 72% according to a Deseret News poll. The citizens of Utah obviously understand that these are two separate, unrelated issues, so why the unwillingness to hear the bill? If marriage equality became the law of the land, LGBT Utahns would still be denied housing and jobs based on their orientation/identity. The other question related to SB 100. Does refusing to hear SB 100 because the blue notes in your words showed that the issue is too emotionally charged only reinforce Utah's low voter turnout? Here we have a group of concerned citizens willing to spend their weekend hangout at the Senate chamber doors and kindly ask for your attention, and your response has been to tell them they care too much. Also in response to the broadcast, here, Senator Niederhauser said that SB 100 needed more time, that bills go best when they are given time. Yet this bill or something very similar has been proposed 6 years in a row. How much time is appropriate before the Senate will be prepared to hear it?
And time and deliberation obviously is important to good policy, but probably more important is there's an environment that we don't understand yet while the Amendment 3 is being appealed to the 10th Circuit and probably to the Supreme Court. And it would be imprudent for us to discuss what we're going to do with religious liberties and the discrimination bill until we know better what that environment is going to be. That will help us to create the best policy for Utah. And we're hearing from both sides of this issue. I've gotten a lot of email and phone calls of people that are wanting us to hear the religious liberties bills. They want us to hear that this year. I get a lot wanting to hear the non-discrimination bills. And again, unfortunately, I guess for Senate Bill 100, there was the issue was intensified by Judge Selby's decision. And again, I just want to highlight that last year was a big year for gun bills, and this year it's not. It's a less emotional time for gun issues. It's probably a better time to address gun issues now. And I'm confident that the non-discrimination bills will get a fair hearing and a fair process in a time when it is not as charged as it is today.
Senator, here's a strange question that involves both religious liberty and air quality, actually. The governor's proposed a season-long ban on wood burning in non-attainment counties. And some of the individuals who participate in the sweat lodge ceremonies at the VA hospital in Salt Lake City are concerned that that would prohibit their use of wood burning for what is in essence a spiritual, if not religious, ceremony. The Division of Air Quality tells me that under their rules that's a recreational use of wood burning and therefore subject to the rules. Is there a place to provide a religious liberty exception to some of these rules that are being discussed?
Yeah, a lot of that's possible during the legislative session. It's the first time I've heard of the issue, and the legislature has been opposed at an absolute mandate against wood burning. I think we're more in favor of seeing help to those who have a primary source, who use wood as a primary source, to get them to convert to natural gas, and then during clean burn days, being able to allow maybe the sweat lodge things to take place, some other, you might be able to have a barbecue in the backyard, cooking hot dogs, that type of thing. But a couple of days before, we can predict now inversions with a high degree of accuracy. A couple days before and during that time, we want to discourage the burning of wood, because it does add to the problems in our inversion.
I'd like to add this too. That's one of the great advantages of the legislative process, because you have an idea and you present a bill, you have to word it, do it, and then you have people come out of the woodwork and say, it doesn't work here, it doesn't work there, and then you can work it through, and you may find the idea doesn't work at all. But you may find some amendments and things you can work it out, because not all of us, even when you sit and think and work in an area, know all the ramifications. And that's why the legislative process and committee meetings are so important.
We've got a couple of doctors that joined us from the county, and I don't know whether they've got any questions, but it's good to have UMA on the Hill, and appreciate you being here. We're open for questions if you want to ask them.
If you could, try to imagine how long you think it will be before we will be able to move on the Tier 3 fuels.
We're in a discovery process, Senator Okerlund.
Some of that's going to be market driven, as we've been talking about. As cleaner cars, cleaner emission products, or vehicles become available out there, and more people take advantage of it and buy them. So President Niederhauser is saying he has one now, and as people move towards something that's less expensive to drive, if it's natural gas or electric, it's going to take a while. But the Tier 3 fuels, the vehicles that can most efficiently use those, as they become available to us, probably within a couple of years. Somebody else's guess may be better than mine, but 2017 probably we should be well on our way towards being able to do that, and it may take a decade before we get most of the cars that are the most efficient to be able to use that Tier 3 fuel. So it isn't going to happen overnight, but a lot of it's going to be market driven, and we're going to continue to move that direction as time goes on. And kind of hard to guess. We'd like to speed that process up. Everybody would like to speed that process up. We'd love to have the best available technology tomorrow, but we'll move towards it, I think, as a society, as quickly as we can.
And there's two elements to that. One is the fuel, and the other is the car.
Yeah.
I mean, the cars are available now, and the public ought to know they're available, because, as we know, President Niederhauser drives one. But if you go to your dealer and don't know it's available, you don't know what to ask for. So you can get a Tier 3 car now. The fuel is a little bit longer process, and that has to, you have to retool and actually change what happens inside of the refineries. And so I think they're in process of that. We're hearing that they're actually dropping the sulfur in the fuel today. And I think as they go through that process, it will happen as indicated by market forces, and as they're able to do it in a cost-effective way. But today, Tier 3 cars are available. Go buy one.
I'm a hybrid.
There we go.
Didn't Jeremy Roberts have a budget tweet yesterday?
Yes, and quickly, there is a tweet about what about relaxed incentives for alternate power vehicles, since you're on that topic.
Relaxing what?
Relax incentives for alternate power vehicles.
We have incentives now. I think we have a tax incentive. I think it expires, but we probably would look at reauthorizing it. But I think there is a tax incentive for alternate fuel vehicles.
Yeah, there's some Senator Knutson's got a comment.
Yeah, you know, languaging is a very important part of any process, and the doctors, they know exactly what we're talking about with tier 1, tier vehicles, or tier 3 or whatever. But I've had constituents call and ask me to explain what is a tier 1 or a tier 2 or a tier 3. Maybe you could write an article and educate us.
A little bit of an assignment for you guys for tomorrow.
With the medical people here, what about medical cannabis? Frower's bill came out, and there's some issue. It's going to come up about, is there an acceptable form of marijuana for medicinal purposes?
Representative Farrar's bill addresses that that small little exception for those children that have epilepsy, and the big question for him and the bill will be, how will that be distributed? And I think that the important part there is we want that to be available to these children, because we haven't seen the medical evidence, but at least what we're hearing is that this will is a game changer for these children, and we'd want to do everything we can with the law to make that change. But there needs to be a controlled way to distribute that product to these children, so that we're not going to be going down the road to like Colorado or Washington. We're going to make sure that any extract of marijuana, cannabis is going to be will be available, but in a controlled way. Other questions?
Final questions. Yeah, the one from Jeremy Roberts. This was from yesterday. He wanted to know, where are we at on our constitutional limit on bonding? That's the Senator Hilliard question.
Senator Hilliard?
Currently, we have a constitutional limit, and we are probably at about 80%. Part of the problem is that's based on property values, and property values with the fall in 2008 went down. And so even though we were at the same bonding level, we got higher because the rate came down. But that's coming back up. I understand that if we can control our bonding for about 2 more years, we will get down into the 70, 65 area. I personally would like to get down where we've historically been, between 40 and 50, and that's going to take a few years. We went high on purpose because we knew we had to do I-15 through Utah County. And it was a great investment. We did it for much less than we projected, and so that really worked out to be a wise decision. But we just need to learn that 80 and 85% is not our goal. It was our limit before. We just need to be controlled for the next 2 years, and I think we'll be down to a level that we can live with.
So no bonding this year?
I hope not, but it's like that bill. It's not finally dead until 2 days after the session.
Last question.
Good advice, I think. How can a person who rents persuade a landlord to start recycling for tenants?
Well, I think that most of our municipalities have gone to great lengths to encourage recycling, and I'm not sure where that question comes from, but if your municipality isn't actively engaged in recycling, you should definitely contact your city council person. It's a good thing.
We'll talk Senator Stewart and Adams into carrying a bill like that.
Yeah, well, hopefully their vehicles are all converted to natural gas. So,
Thanks, everyone.